Okay. I want to move on to the next subject, which is the development of I'm not sure how to put this, a paper that describes how we're going to consider people for positions on the board of directors of NaCCRA and for chairs of the various committees of NaCCRA, and make recommendations to the board of directors for those people. One of the points I want to emphasize to you all that I personally believe it's important in the development of your officers and your staffs that they get experience not only at the local level and within the CCRCs themselves and within residents' councils and residents' associations there, but also that they get some experience at the national level as well, so that with that we are all working together to promote the things that we need to promote and get action completed. When I sent all that material out to you, I got a response from Jim McLean, which was not too long. It was fairly short, but I thought it was very well done, and I thought it might be the start of something we could use to prepare as guidelines for the selection of individuals for these posts. Jim, are you with us still?
Yes, I am.
Would you care to comment on things you sent me? I have passed that on to the entire state president's group council.
Yes, I just went through the presentation Bennett put together that you provided us, and I think, of course, there's a lot of great material in there, but I really couldn't find anything that really struck me as fitting awfully well with the charge you were giving us. So I went to some sources I've used, and I came up with a couple of articles, which none of which are profound, but they help me think about the tasks that we have, and I just thought they were worth passing on. So I passed them on as possibilities for generating a little bit of a document that would allow us to help get the right kind of people up for board positions.
Well, I felt they were very useful, and that's why I passed them on to the rest of the Council of State Presidents. I do believe they could form a foundation for something we could put together to act as a guidance for us. And I wanted to know if anyone else had any comments about that or any of the other material that I set out.
This is Gerard Highland. I have found that Board Source is a good source for documents of that type, and a good source for documents to consider with regard to your CCRC's Board of Directors. They have documents on IRS Form 990 and other subjects of that boards of directors should be concerned with. They are a not-for-profit whose sole purpose is to advise boards of directors at not-for-profit organizations.
Gerard, this is Jim McLean again.
Yes.
Gerard, I agree with your assessment of Board Source. It's one of my favorite places to go when I need information on nonprofits. I went there looking for something on board member selection and qualifications, and I struggled to find something on Board Source this time that was pertinent to what we were trying to do. Maybe somebody else could look and see if they found anything. But I did do a search of Board Source before I sent Walt these documents. And that is not to denigrate Board Source, because I think highly of all of their publications.
Does anyone else have any comments? This part of the meeting is then being relatively short. I do want to thank Jim McLean for this, because I think he did a good job, and it provides a good start for us. I will be taking a look at it myself. I would like each of you to do that as well, and look at some of the other materials that I sent out, plus any that you can find locally within your state, and see if we can come up with a document that we all can agree to and use in the future for developing candidates for the board and for our committees. Right now, we could use some good people on committees, and one of the comments I received during the interim, which is a little different than I'm expected, I have to admit, since I came from a military background, is that look for people that have been on boards. They don't necessarily have to have been on nonprofit boards, although that will help, but people that have had executive positions in companies and organizations of a significant size, that have been on boards in the past and have an understanding of what the responsibilities and authorities are of boards and executives. I presume that you look for those kind of people when you are looking for individuals within your states to take on responsibilities within your states. And I would hope that you were going to be looking for and using the same attributes for those that you might want to recommend to NaCCRA. Before I depart, I want to ask if anyone has come up with anyone specifically that they would like to recommend as a candidate for the board at this time, or for one of the committees that I mentioned in that email that I sent out to you. I don't hear any responses, but so I will keep nagging you about this, because we do need to get some names from people and some recommendations.
I don't know what my fellow state leaders find, but here in Maryland, this is Bill from Maryland, people aren't actually clamoring to get these jobs, and our criteria around here is if they're sensible, reasonable people and they're willing to do it, they'd probably get the job. Looking for these higher levels of experience and skill, and they're very few and far between. The few people where I live that have had not-for-profit board experience, now they've retired, are still doing those not-for-profit board jobs, and therefore are not available for us. Mm-hmm. And
I know many of them are, but occasionally you will find one that is willing if you approach them and ask.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway, my first reaction to reading the materials was it's very optimistic compared with the average person that we find available to take up the state positions. That doesn't mean to say we shouldn't try.
I'm not too sure about that. I think you find that the people you select are very competent in their own way. And I grant you that not everyone has been the president or CEO of a big company, but they have, many of the people that come into CCRCs have had experience in industry And I think you'll find that they need to be approached. They're not, I agree that they won't volunteer. They don't volunteer very easily because they think they're retired and they like the idea of being retired. But if you approach them, I believe that many of them will say yes. Enough of them that we should be able to get some very competent people to work both at the state level and at the national level.
For us as a group to put together a package of how to sell that point might be worthwhile.
Yeah. In any case, it might be interesting to look at the backgrounds of some of the people that you have in your CCRCs and ask, what Jack Cumming has suggested to me, which is a good idea, and he's mentioned a couple of names as I go to the CCRCs in North Carolina, and look for people that have had experience in industry and on boards in the past, and try to get them interested in doing something with us. If we don't ask them, they may not have the impetus to volunteer themselves. So we do need to ask them on a personal basis, not on a general basis.
I'd like to point out, this is Jack Snyder, I'd like to make a comment here, if I may, that, when you're starting to look at who is appropriate to be on the board, the natural thing for us to look at is what are their attributes, what are their traits. Traits are often ingrained, and when we think of traits, we think of outgoing, shy, gregarious, introverted, and so we're really looking for something more than somebody who can fog a mirror and raise their hand.
Yeah.
Attribute is something else that's a context of specific behaviors that are learned as part of external experiences. But the things I think we really need to look at are what are the competencies of these people. So I endorse what Walt is saying. Look at what some of the experiences are the people in your CCRC have had. You wouldn't want somebody necessarily who's really good at financial issues being assigned a responsibility of being in charge of membership and recruiting. Different set of competencies required, yet they may both have the same traits and attributes. So what was their previous position? What did they do? Somebody who was a financial officer for any kind of a large or small organization, preferably small, because we are small, no matter whether it's a state or the national organization. Somebody who understands accounting, can handle that, has done it, and even though the job really might be a bookkeeping job, they may or may not want to step to doing something like that, particularly if there's no software available for them and they have to come up with that on their own. If somebody said to me, Jack, you ought to be treasurer of the state of Illinois, I would say anybody but me. But you ought to be looking. But if somebody said, Jack, be in charge of membership and recruiting, I'd raise my hand, say, yeah, I like that, because that fits with what my background is. So we all have a tendency to say they're a great fellow, well met. We recommend them because they're so cooperative and they work. That's only the tip of the iceberg. You want somebody who has the competencies for what we're asking them to do. So if we're looking for somebody to be CCRC financial soundness or communications or advocacy and lobbying or membership and recruiting, or those are the committees that we're looking for, then be sure they bring something to the table that is relevant to what it is we're trying to do. Otherwise, it's the blind leading the ignorant in these cases. End of speech.
Thank you very much, Jack. That was very well said. I don't have anything more to bring up at this meeting. I think you have summarized my comments very much, Jack, and so with that, unless there's someone else has something to say, I'm prepared to adjourn the meeting until April, what did I say? I think it's the 23rd. No, let me look at my calendar first. Not the 23rd. It's May the 25th. May the 25th would be our next meeting.
Okay.
And can I ask, this is Jack, and I'm really not part of this committee, but what would the objectives be, or what would you see the points of discussion at that point? What should everybody be working on?
And well, I'm going to be working with them by email with everyone, trying to establish and get a document together that will give us some guidelines. But the second part of that is we really want the names of some people that we can put on our list and say these are individuals who might be very good board members or very appropriate as the heads of some of these committees, and have them in the wings so that we can take those to the board. And I would like very much to get those some of those names down within the next 2 months as well. And if it takes my going to the state presidents on an individual basis, that's what I will be doing during April. I'm going to be gone for the next 2 weeks into Arizona. I've got some personal business to take care of, and then I am also going to be visiting 2 CCRCs, one in Oro Valley and the other in Green Valley in Arizona, and with the idea of trying to find out whether they are interested in establishing a state organization out there in Arizona. Anything anyone else cares to bring up for this meeting? Okay. Thank you very much, and I consider the meeting adjourned, and I appreciate your attendance.